So let's do this again. Let's try to see if I can actually explain to you how a game characters, they get rendered on the screen. All right, and this is going to be a simple explanation, small introduction, a primer to computer graphics. But basically, I'm going to explain to you what happens inside the GPU, what are attributes, what are uniforms, right? Textures, and what are we doing here, right? So let me explain, starting out with bringing up Blender again, because I think this is a cool problem. Or actually, let me bring, since I'm going to be using that character, let me see if I can actually, give me a one little second so I can actually use the same character that you see there. Where do we have this? Space models. Oh, cool, I do have it. All right, nice, cool, I have it here. All right, let me get rid of this island here. All right, so we have this little character, an astronaut that I hired someone to do a long time ago. All right, and we want to render this character using our game engine, right? And you're wondering, okay, how do we take this character, right, and render it on a mobile device or render it on the screen of my TV, or how does a game console renders this, right? So here's what you need to know, right? This character has some attributes that we care about, and they are the vertices, the normal vectors, and the UV coordinates. And also, we also want the texture of this character, all right? Now, I'm gonna go into edit mode so you can actually see the vertices of this character, all right? And now we are seeing the vertices. Now, the vertices that you see here, right, they are sent over to the GPU, all right? And the vertices are used, obviously, to recreate the geometry of our character, right? That's the main purpose of it. We don't have these vertices, we cannot recreate the geometry, we cannot recreate the character, right? Aside from this, we also need our normal vectors, right? And the normal vectors are essentially vectors that are normal to the vertices, all right? So actually, if I go, I'm gonna click normal here, so you will see how this will flip. Look at the axis of the vertices right now, and now it will flip, right? So now it has flipped. Normal, if I go to view, that should be the normal one. The vectors, the vertices, and this one will be the normal, but I'm gonna go into my global because that's where I'm at. All right. So you can see, we need to send the vertices. We need to send the normals, and I forgot to mention why we need the normal vectors. Well, the normal vectors are used for lighting our character, for applying the correct shading to our character, right? I will explain more about that later on, all right? But basically, that's what we need it for. And the third set of information that we need from this character are the UV coordinates of the character. And we need the UV coordinates to be able to apply a texture to the character, right? So I'm gonna go into my UV editing here so you can actually see what I'm talking about, and I'm only going to edit. All right. Okay. Now, do you see all of these little points that you see here whenever I click on them? All right. They represent an UV coordinate. All right. Basically, what we have done is we have gone from 3D space into a 2D space, right? We basically unwrap the character. And as we unwrap the characters, the vertices went from 3D to 2D, right? And they are called UV space, right? And we needed this because what we're going to do is we're going to apply a texture, and this is the texture that you see, right? What I'm highlighting over here. This is the texture that we will apply to the character, right? So, but for us to apply a texture, we need to know the UV coordinates, right? And once we do that, we are cool. So I'm actually gonna go to texture, boom, here. All right, so this three set of data along with the object space are sent to the GPU. All right. So I want you to know some terminology here, right? So the vertices, normal vectors, and texture, UV coordinates, they are known as attributes. All right, and we package them up and we send them to the GPU so that the GPU, will know what to render basically. All right. So now let me reiterate all of what we have talked about up to now. All right. So this is the vertices. I am highlighting them here. These are the normals. Basically, normals are vectors that are normal to the vertices, right? And then we have our UV coordinates. All right. So I'm going to show you, the whole diagram that represents in a very simplified manner what the GPU, the whole rendering pipeline basically. All right. So like I mentioned, this set of data that I'm highlighting, the vertices, normals, and the UV coordinates are called attributes. All right. And they are sent to the GPU, right? They are basically received by the vertex shader, right? And what happens in the vertex shader? Well, the vertex shader is a small program in the GPU whose sole purpose is to position your character in the right in the right space. All right, that's what the vertex shader does, right? And to do that, it needs another information, and that is which we call the uniforms. And the uniforms essentially store our space coordinate for our model, right? And when we send data in the as uniforms, we usually send this type of data. The object space, we may also want to send the model world space, the view camera space, right? We may want to know the position of the character in object space or model space. We want to know, okay, where's my camera position, right? And then we send all of this data, and then in the vertex shader, we compute our model view perspective space, right? And that basically will, show where will tell the GPU where to position the character, right? With respect to our screen, right? So this is the information that we send, and this is basically a bunch of matrices that we're sending over. All right, bunch of matrices are being sent over to the GPU. Actually, let me see if I have something here to show you, and I think I do have it because I want you to see how it looks. All right, so this is basically a set of information that we may be sending as a uniform, right? This is a matrix, and what I want you to notice is that it's a 4x4 matrix, right? And the 3x3 matrix that you see here, that I'm hopefully highlighting properly, that 3x3 matrix store rotation information about our character, all right? And the one on the right hand side, this is a vector, and that basically stores our position of the character, right? Where is the character located, right? So we send multiple matrices like this, and we do a space transformations among them, right? And that's what the whole purpose of the uniform. And like I said, in the vertex shader is more concerned about rebuilding our character. No, not rebuilding our character. About positioning our character. About positioning our character in the right location, right? And then our fragment shader. The fragment shader is more concerned, or what happens in there is that's where we apply a color to our pixel, right? That's where we say, okay, this pixel should be color red or blue, right? Fragment shader is all about applying a color to our pixel or of applying a texture to our character, all right? So that's where all of the texture comes into play, right? In the fragment shader, that's where we apply our texture. And once that is completed, our information, our regenerated model goes and is sent to the frame buffer, and that's where it shows up, right, as a game character. And that's basically the whole process, right? Now, this little two flags here, this flag here that I'm highlighting, right? I'm simplifying it quite a lot, but basically this is the rendering pipeline. And I'm gonna restate this again. This has been simplified quite a lot because there's other stages that I will want to talk about later on as we go. But as a primer, as an introduction to computer graphics, I want you to know this: that we have data that we send to the GPU, and they are known as attributes. They are vertices, normal vectors, and UV coordinates. We have normal uniform data, which is basically space data about our characters, about our world, about our camera, where the camera is at, and that is used by the vertex shader and the fragment shader to recreate our model on the screen, right? So I just want you to know that. So this is basically the primer that I wanted to give you guys, the introduction to computer graphics. This is really cool stuff, believe me. It's very interesting how it all works, but it can get really complex really fast. So I'm hoping that this is valuable to you, and if you think that this is good, good information for you, let me know so I'll do this more and more during my live streams. Now, my whole point is not to take a whole hour just focusing on this, but I do want to take like 10 minutes just to share, a little bit of knowledge every single day, so you guys you get that big picture, and hopefully you understand computer graphics. Hopefully you learn computer graphics and build whatever you want to build.